Evening all, welcome to some more tactics. Right, well, I guess we've kind of done this one to death. This is not necessarily dropships, but we're going to show you maybe coverage today. Coverage is something that I think a lot of people don't generally know so much about. And for example, let me show you this. On this particular map, which the name escapes me, but Impact Ridge, I don't know. You have this very large tower in the top, and particularly on dominations, look at the vantage you have on point A. This used to be kind of a bit of a secret. I don't know why. I think we saw a gang of people doing it and thought, aha, nice idea. So generally whenever there's a dom on, we always put someone up there. And let me explain what's going on. Now you probably can't see, well in fact you cannot see this, but Stefan is currently sat there with a Wurakomi breach swarm launcher. Forge gun, and what that thing is really good at is obviously being stationary and then producing a held shot that you can then use to kill stuff, which is phenomenally powerful in this particular map. So, you know, I'm almost amazed that people aren't fighting more so for that elevated position, because the reality is if you've got that elevated position and a forge gun, nobody can hack. More or less. Obviously they can if they're sneaky, but generally nobody can hack. So that's kind of the first point of coverage in that context. Now the second point here is vehicles are very potent on this particular map for many reasons. As you can see, my dropship's pretty powerful. It can do quite a lot of damage, and tanks on the main road can also really dominate the area. However, you see this like complex here. The Reds here have done a very good job in making that a bit of a fortress, and this is where I would say again coverage is kind of important, because as long as they hold that and the supply depot and the CIU, they have a very difficult kind of vantage to break on the point. And as you can see, this anybody outside of those buildings is getting stomped because obviously they're in the open, so dropships and tanks can pretty much drop them. So it's really weird how few people I think really understand and use coverage, particularly when it comes to each map as it may appear. And I think particularly when you get sort of like dominations really is about having spawn pads near the point. Now there's no point putting spawn pads in the open generally. Emergency ones fine, but generally it's risky to do that. But here we go, prime example. I'm shooting at A, but Stefan has got a great shot on, and boom, there he goes. Nobody can hack with Stefan sat there on that very high point, and that's just one of many that you can actually get advantage from. On top of those oil drums in front on the top of the screen, they're also just as good, and so on. But you can see the real requirement for I think doing well in these kind of matches is actually more based around the coverage you have looking down. So dropships obviously shoot down, Stefan is also shooting down, and on those elevated on the elevated horseshoe around this base, you can set up quite a nice perimeter as well. So that complex, while it was certainly serving them quite well, has been stormed and they have been dispatched, and we now own this space, bro. And that's kind of it. And this is kind of the thing really with Dust, is that once you kind of figure out the tactics of the map, you really so the other one is, for example, Skim Junction. I think I've got that right. No, I haven't. Line Harvest. That's the one with the 6 large towers. Now again, if you have a good forge gunner and you have a good dropshipper, you can get up to a vantage and then shoot down, and you'll be doing quite a lot of damage. Any map with the research facility, you know the one I mean, with the 2 sort of silos, they have stairs at the very back, and you can end up shooting down on them. So if you're shooting down on people, the chances are you're going to get headshots, therefore do more damage. So you see, this is why it's quite important to have the coverage, but also maybe the altitude to a degree as well. So as we come to kind of point C, so this will be skirmish C in my mind, we start to see that obviously they're using the height of the buildings here, but the reality is that again with a dropship even above them, height is kind of important. It's funny because in War Thunder, that World War II wonderful recreation of dogfighting, it's all about having the altitude, and whoever generally has altitude is going to win. And I think there could be you could almost say the same here with Dust. If your team is above another team, shooting down is incredibly easy. The weapons also come with it as well, so flaylocks, mass drivers, whatever they may be. You get a natural bonus to shoot down than you would obviously shooting up as well. Forge guns I think are 50-50, but again, if you're shooting down, you can just aim near somebody and get the splash damage kill. So it's all, I know it's obvious stuff, massively obvious stuff. But what I would just suggest to you, my merc brother, is that the reality is that most of the times when you see the map, you should try and figure out what you want to do with that map, what tactic you're going to use, what fits you're going to use. I don't always dropship. I am doing a lot of it lately, but there are certain maps like Ashlands where I won't dropship generally because it would just be foolish to do so. However, dropshippers can do, and that's the one with the great big spaceship on the launch pad in the middle, very tight map. That's a good one because if you get on top of that very large tower, there's very little that can then push you off that. So it's all about the situational awareness of the map, if you so wish to sort of call it that. And I think certainly in this kind of scenario, the elevated positions we had was very, very advantageous. So we go, so they try and orbital my dropship. How dare they? Oh yeah, I'm always quite surprised when people try to orbital a dropship. It does seem a tad pointless, but hey, all power to you, bros. I think the reality is that having the coverage can be pretty much essential. Think of it as a sniper. If you have, and I don't mean like a dust sniper, I mean a normal IRL sniper. If you have a sniper that's watching a vantage or a point where you know the enemy are going to advance through, that one sniper can hold up dozens of men by literally just being there, being a presence. And I think the same applies here in maps like this, and this is probably the most apt because of that large tower. Having Stefan up there with a forge gun is deadly. You can have the team of a few people up there with a sniper rifle, either way. Having that very, I guess, advantageous view on A makes for quite a powerful tactic. And to be honest, so many of the sockets are like this. Like, you know, the one with the 3 rings? That is exactly the same as well, as in you can get onto an elevated point with a spawn pad and you can sit up there with a, I don't know, a Devol tactical or a rail rifle, and you can pretty much own the whole map throughout the match because they can't hack it. You'll always have a shot on them hacking. So with dominations, and it really only is obviously working for dominations, but I think with particularly this map and other domination maps, I think you need to learn how to get the best coverage for the style of play that you're using. And I'm loving dropship at the moment quite a lot. Obviously loads of issues with it, but the reality is that having that kind of, you know, elevated position that you can shoot down and do a lot of damage from is of incredible advantage to you. And there we go, didn't do too bad either, 17-0, which is that's pretty good for me, to be quite honest with you. So it's a funny thing, tactics in this game are always migratory, and I know we've probably covered something around this before, but the reality is that particularly as the tactics and fits change, the tactics do also. Hope you enjoyed that. See you next time.